Hey everyone, this is Brano, and I want to talk about how to not ruin your game like Mario Kart World. So from time to time, you will witness a developer make a really bad decision that doesn't make any sense, other than the developer had an intention in mind and the players have said, no, we don't like this part of your game, we're going to circumvent it. And then they double down and they force the players to play the game how they intended. And that's what Nintendo has done with Mario Kart World. So, one of the new features of Mario Kart World is this connection track, where basically you enter the pre and you basically have to go through this connection track race, which is almost entirely a straight line before you get to the actual track. And people have rightfully said, this isn't very fun. I like this part right here. Let me see if I can just pause it. It's a bit hard to see, but I like the actual track, but I don't like this big connection straight line. And so people were looking, how can we avoid this? And so when people are choosing a selection, this is how it was at the beginning of the game. Almost everything else is a specific track that's been selected, and there's a couple of people who are random. This is how it was in Mario Kart 8. But when people worked out that they can avoid the connection tracks, what they've done is almost entirely select random. So almost all of these are random. Almost all of these are randomly selected. And if you pick random, you get to avoid this straight track. And instead, you can do 3 tracks of this small court right here, which is the most fun. It's your traditional Mario Kart track. Now, as a game developer, I do not blame Nintendo and the Mario Kart team for trying something different and new. But you've got to acknowledge once you have tried something new and different, that when it doesn't work out, that you've got to just accept it. Especially once it's after launch, you've got a feature and it's not particularly well liked or loved. You gotta accept that it's a failure in design and give people a way to properly circumvent it, because let's face it, not a lot of people like the connection tracks. But Nintendo doubled down on this, and it's now, the change that they did was basically make it so that when you pick random, it has a 50-50 chance of choosing a connection track or one of the modes where you do 3 laps of a traditional track. So basically, they removed the ability to properly circumvent it, and people are very upset by it. It is basically a design decision that spits in the face of how the community was playing, and I think it is a obviously awful decision. But I've got to ask the question, am I myself 100% above ever doing anything like this? And the answer is no. So I think there's a lot to learn from Nintendo's mistake here as an indie developer. So what can we learn from this? Well, I think in general, you do have to put players' feedback and how players play the game at a very high bar. You have to take it very seriously. And this comes down to the question of whether you should or should not listen to feedback during development. So I had this question. I was very open with development and I took feedback very seriously. And there is this balance between when do I listen to feedback and when do I not listen to feedback. And I think the way that I approach it is that I don't really see the project as an extension of myself. It kind of is, but I do try and distance myself from the project, distance myself, remove my ego from the project, and really view myself as the director of the projects. And my job as the director is to make sure that the core identity of the game is respected. And so I'm not there to dictate every single feature 100%. I'm there to filter suggestions that serve the core identity of the game and filter out suggestions that don't. And as a solo dev, I don't have teammates, so it very much is the case of players who give feedback would be the same as core developers who are pitching in ideas to the director on what they think the game should be. And as the director, you want to take on those ideas pretty seriously and say, does this work with the overall vision of the game? And I think this is one of the best parts of being an indie game, like a solo dev that does open game development, is that you give hardcore gamers who really do deeply think about video games, but they don't have any of the technical skills to make it themselves, a way to contribute to a project that they care about. And I think it does overall make the game significantly better than it otherwise would be. Like, one of the best feedback I get is anything that involves quality of life or improving kind of like visual, or I'm struggling to learn this one aspect of the game. Almost all that feedback is like really good and really helpful. But we can go into more questionable pieces of feedback. And these are some of the big suggestions that don't really align with the core identity of the game. So a major feedback item I got with Healed to Death, my game, I'm just going to bring this up here, was that basically I have made a roguelite where you play as the healer of a party, where I take MMORPG healing and make it just a single player roguelike. And one of the major criticisms I got is that when you select your party, once you are done with the run, you lose all the levels, all the parts of the game, like everything that you have gained from this run, it is basically erased except for the gold that you gather, which is used for overworld progression. That's erased. And the reason as to why I decided to not listen to that is because if they wanted to have permanence within this game, it was going to be a completely different game. It completely changes the identity of what this game is. So I gain a level and all that, and if I go back to the main menu and I exit this level, basically, if I kept that project, it completely changes everything else within this game, so I didn't go with it. Now, it's not an intrinsically wrong suggestion, but it doesn't serve the core identity of the game. And that's where you have to disregard feedback. It's kind of like Tim Kaine was telling a story about with one of his games. Late into development, he had a teammate that wanted to remove all ammunition from the game. Now, it's an interesting design decision, and it's not intrinsically a bad design pillar, but it's a type of idea that you need implemented within like 1 month into pre-design compared to a couple of months outside of launch. Like, it's a perfectly reasonable design within the first couple of months of development, but it isn't an awful idea when you're like 4 months from releasing the game. So it's like you have to respect the core game's identity, but there are going to be times when you have player feedback that doesn't align with yourself at the moment, but overall, it was the correct feedback. And sometimes you do have to acknowledge that players were correct. So a mistake that I made with this game was this party selection, where basically every single time you play this, these are going to be different dudes. So you'll see I've got the Blood Giver, the Dark Mender, and the Mystic as options with this game. And you have to select from one of these. And the big issue that people found is that they really liked one of these classes and they wanted to specialize with them. And I was forcing them to make a a decision from a random pool of heroes. And I've even got like seed protection as well. So if I return and go back, it will be the same dude. So I am forcing you to select from the same group of heroes until you go for a run. Now, it's very easy to override this. You just select them, exit the run, and you'll get a new selection of heroes. I shouldn't have done that. And the players who really wanted to, let's say, just play a blood giver and specialize on that, they didn't really get to, and this was a common complaint I got. And it took me a while to realize that they were correct post-launch, that, yeah, they were correct. And I think that the best thing I could have done is that instead of allowing these to be a random selection of people, I would have allowed all 7 healers to be unlocked. So you start with the priest and then you can unlock them from the inn. So if I go into overworld progression, I'll just wait for this to load. And I go back here and I go into the town. Basically, instead of just having like, oh, each bed allows you to select a new random, hero, it would have been much better if I just made it so that you could unlock each hero individually. Or like maybe I have like a random button or something. And, you know, if I get around to patch 1.2, I will probably change that. I will probably change the system so you can select one of the 21 different DPS characters, one of the 7 or 9 healers I think I've got, actually. I think I got 9. I forget how many people I have. But anyway, that's what I would do differently. And once again, it's just like I didn't take that player feedback seriously enough at the time. And now I played a lot more roguelike games, and I totally understand the complaint now. It's like, you know what? I actually agree with it. This is the way I should have done things. So, as insane as the Mario Kart random change is, and it is a truly awful decision, you kind of have to keep in mind that with the amount of decisions you make as a game developer making a game, you will eventually be guilty at not listening to good player feedback. It's eventually going to happen, and you need to continually reassess, am I making the right decision? As at the end of the day, you're here to serve players, and that is what your primary focus should be. So that's it for me. Have a good one. Bye.